Welcome, everyone. Today we have Pastor Rhume J. Becbec. He will be sharing a bit about himself as we get to know him better. Let's kick it off. Pastor RJ, how did you get into ministry?
Well, first off, I never really saw myself being a pastor. Yes, I did grow up in the church. I was born and raised in Brampton. I went to Bramley Church, the Filipino church there. I was one of those kids that you would just see running around. I didn't really care about the church service. Actually, most of the times I would be either in the basement or I would be outside during the service. I was only there because my friends were there. My mom sort of forced me, but I wanted to go because of my friends, because I was involved in Pathfinders. But I guess God never, he never really meant anything to me until I graduated in high school. Right after I graduated into high school, I had my experience with Jesus where I felt so alone. I felt so empty. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't even apply in any colleges or university because I was afraid. And God called me and he told me to be a pastor. From that time on, I felt like a huge weight was lifted off my shoulder. I felt like my life had meaning, and I decided to go to our institution in the Philippines for my undergrad, Adventist University of the Philippines. So I went there in 2006 until 2011 when I graduated. I came back here, and the Ontario Conference told me that there was nothing for me. You see, in 2006, they told me that there were some pastors who were retiring, and until that time, they did not retire, and I was just left waiting. So what I did was I decided to just volunteer wherever. I preached in different churches. At the same time, I worked at Taco Bell. I was a cashier at Taco Bell. I also worked at Mandarin afterwards. I was a busboy in Mandarin, and I worked on the grill for about a year. And in 2012, I decided, or at the end of 2011, in December, I remember, I came home from Taco Bell one day and I said to myself, this is not what God wants me to do. God wants me to be a pastor. So what I did was I decided to message some churches and volunteer. So I started to volunteer at Mount Zion Filipino Church in 2012. I didn't receive, at first, for the first few months, I didn't receive anything from them. I just went there. I lived in Brampton and I had to drive, or my parents, I didn't drive at the time, I didn't have a car. My parents drove me to Mount Zion, which is around 30 minutes away in Downsview, and I volunteered there. After a while, I got taken as a part time Bible worker for the youth. And the stipend that I received was just enough for my insurance, my gas, and my car. And that's all I did. I worked, I stopped working at Taco Bell and I just continued to do ministry because this is what I felt God wanted me to do. In 2013, I got taken in from the conference part time. So I was working part time. I was working actually full time with a part time salary and I was enjoying my ministry there with my two pastors, my two senior pastors, and as well with the youth. In 2015, I got called to be full time, and I was moved to First Philcan SDA Church, which is also near there in Downsview, and also in downtown Faith Filipino. So I was there in those two churches pastoring. In 2017, the conference allowed me to go to Andrews University, where I've been for the past 2.5 years, studying my MDiv. I graduated in December of last year, 2019, and here I am now, excited to continue on with ministry.
Awesome. Awesome story there. And we continue with the stories. How do you feel coming into a church that has a different culture from your previous churches?
Yeah, actually, one of the reasons why I went to Philippines to begin with was because I had a thought that I would be pastoring in a Filipino church, and being born and raised in Brampton, knowing like Canadian culture, being able to talk with the youth, I already knew how to do that, but I felt like I didn't know how to talk with the older generation at the churches that I thought that I would be at. That's why I went there. And what I learned was that there's something different about learning a new culture. Although it was a similar culture, like Filipino, I was not really like a Filipino. Like the older generation, they would have jokes, they would talk about different things, and I had no idea what they were talking about before until I went to Philippines and learned about that. And what I learned was that when you are immersed in another culture that is different than your own, it makes you appreciate, first, it makes you appreciate your own culture. And also, it makes you appreciate that there's other people that they love Jesus as well, and they have a different context, but at the end of the day, that we're all Christians. So as I'm coming into this church, I feel so excited, first off, for my own personal growth, knowing that I'm in another church for me to grow. At the same time, I'm really excited to not only grow ministry-wise, but also just as a person, to grow and to know other people's culture, to know more about how they grew up, and I know for sure. I've been talking to some other people that grew up in the Caribbean. It's very similar to how it is in Philippines. With the tropical weather. Pastor Connor is always talking about mangoes, and in Philippines we have those delicious mangoes as well. So I know there's a lot of similarities with that. All of my experiences with people from the Caribbean have been great. They've always been loving to me, and especially even in my past districts. Coming from Mount Zion and in Philcan, we would always do youth gatherings with other churches. So there's churches there, not just from Caribbean, but also from Korea, from the Yugoslavian church, the Romanian church, Downju. We would always get together. So I'm a little bit acquainted. At the same time, I'm really excited for something new. One thing that I absolutely love is that even though we are coming from different cultures, that we have the culture of Jesus Christ that actually unites us.
Amen.
That even though we're a little bit different, we have something that binds us together that would help us to, even though we have differences, we can be united in Jesus. And that's what I'm looking forward to as Scarborough Church family.
Awesome. Lovely answers. How did you meet your wife?
So my wife, her name is Zola. Um, I met her in Philippines. Actually, I was friends with her older sister, and when I was a freshman, her older sister was also a freshman, and we were in we call it small groups in Philippines, a group where they like hang out and do Bible studies and all of that. And when she came in, she's a year younger than me. When she came in, she automatically joined that small group because of the older sister, and that's where we first met. Years after, nothing happened at that time, but maybe 2 or 3 years after, when I was in my fourth year, she was in her third year. That's when we got together, and yeah, it was actually because of ministry.
Awesome.
I was a youth leader; she was a youth leader within the church, and we just grew closer together. We see that our values aligned together, and and yeah, that's how it started.
Amazing. What one thing would you tell a young person looking to find their special someone?
Honestly, one of the things that I would always tell people is that to work on yourself, to work on yourself, and to be open to wherever God leads. I did not get into actually. She is my first girlfriend. I am her first boyfriend. We got married, and for my first 4 years of college, I was in college for 5 years. For my first 4 years of college, I didn't get into a relationship. Of course, I wanted to, and I had that feeling that I wanted to. But much more than that, I wanted to develop myself and to grow, and that's what I did. And I felt like the more I did that, the more I grew, and the closer I became to Jesus, the easier it was for me to find someone. The way I see it is something like how if me and my partner, or you and your partner, both grow closer to Jesus, then eventually you will grow closer to each other. Like if you think about it as like a triangle, if you're both going closer towards Jesus, you're gonna eventually go closer to each other, and you'll find people who have the same value as you develop yourself. One of the problems that we find sometimes is we want someone who's so great, but we don't even think about if we're great for that person,
Wow.
right? And if we think about that, that's actually kind of selfish. It is. And sometimes we don't want to admit it. I felt that way. At the same time, we have to think about it as God is in control, and God is going to provide, and God is going to be there. So yeah, work
Awesome.
on yourself.
Sound advice. Young people take note. And lastly, what are your expectations in ministry here at Scarborough?
Coming into Scarborough, especially during these times, I don't have much expectation in terms of what we can do. What I would like, first off, is just to observe it first, see how things are done, and see if there's any other ways where my talents and skills that God has given me can help the church. But the number one expectation that I have is that we would work together. I don't have any expectations in terms of specific things, but in terms of the willingness to serve God, that's what I expect. You can expect that of me. I'll give this church my heart and my soul to work for Jesus. Everything is for Jesus. It's not specifically because I'm at this church that I want to work for Scarborough Church. I want to work for Jesus, and Scarborough Church is part of the family of Jesus. So that's why I want to work for Scarborough Church.
Amazing. It has been a pleasure talking with you. Feels easy. Feels like we've known each other forever.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for taking the time out to do this. We want to let you know that we're here to work with you, and by God's grace, you will have an amazing time here at Scarborough, and you will experience the love that many pastors have come and experienced and are now
Yes.
probably jealous that you're going to experience,
I'm
even
looking
though they're
forward
not
to it.
here.
Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to it.
All right, there you have it. Few words from Pastor RJ, and I hope you get to chat with him and connect with him when all of this COVID thing is over. Thank you guys for staying with us. Take care.